So welcome everybody. I'm here with Rene Dreifuss, from head coach and founder of Radical MMA in New York City. Thanks for joining me, Rene.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Oh, good. I just wanted to start out, kind of give the viewers kind of a basis of what we're talking about here. I know MMA kind of exploded onto the scene. It took over a lot of the fandom that it seemed like boxing, wrestling, things like that had. It seemed like it kind of rose to the top of that pile pretty quickly. So there must have been some demand, some urge that people were looking for that it satisfied. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that, kind of why MMA came about.
I think you're right and you're wrong.
Okay.
Okay, if you don't mind me saying.
No, please do.
The growth of MMA has been very organic, and
Okay.
it has taken really 25 years
Yes.
now. Now it's really exploded in people's consciousness as a legitimate sport,
That's a better way to put
up there with basketball or football or baseball. But it's been in the consciousness of Americans, I think, especially young Americans, since 1993.
Okay.
And it's always been something that people kind of talked about, were interested in. And before that, MMA in other countries was very, very strong. They just didn't call it MMA. It wasn't the modern MMA we know today.
I see.
But there's a significant 100-year-old history to this sport. I always like to talk about first the beginning of mixed style combat. So that's kind of where it started.
Okay.
Where it's like, what do? You do sumo. Well, I do jujitsu. Let's fight and see what works.
So let's get on an even platform here.
Right.
Okay.
And people don't realize that that was very, very popular in the 19th century, particularly like circus attractions. There was a martial art called catch wrestling, catch can wrestling, which is a Western wrestling. It's the basis of the fake professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And they would have, I will fight all comers kind of matches.
Okay.
And very often the Japanese martial artists got pulled into this, the boxers got pulled into this. So you had people of mixed styles competing against each other, and they would mix, interesting rules. One of them, the first televised mixed style match in America, was in the 50s. Gene LeBell, a judo practitioner, and Milo Savage, who was a boxer.
Okay.
And very, very, very famous match. Gene LeBell, the judo player, won.
Yeah.
They had very interesting rules because it wasn't a true MMA match like anything goes.
Yeah.
Gene LeBell had a lot of restrictions. He couldn't do this, he couldn't do that. But then he did wind up being able to, I believe it was won by chokeout.
Oh,
and actually, the boxer, it has been kind of established that he actually cheated by putting like kind of a brass knuckle thing inside his gloves.
Oh.
So the other famous actually has a mixed style, a no holds barred match.
Okay.
It was in Japan against Antonio Inoki, who was a wrestler. It started out to be a fake. It was supposed to be fake. But what happened was, they absolutely, as I understand the story, I'm not one of the people there, I'm not that. I was only like 2 at the time. But they absolutely hated each other. They hated each other, and within 1 minute, they went off script, and they just started fighting. And they kind of just, there was a real fight. And Inoki is a grappler, so he interesting because he is obviously a striker.
Yeah.
So Antonio Inoki, being a grappler, said, "I'm going to lay on my back, and to hit me, you'll have to lean over. And if you lean over to hit me, I will grapple you, I'll armbar you, triangle you, whatever."
Yeah.
So Ali said, "I won't do that." So he kept dancing around him, and then what Inoki did, kept kicking from the bottom, from his back, Ali's shins, and he actually gave him a very, very serious injury that Ali, as I understand it, said hurt the rest of his boxing career. Because he spent 45 minutes suffering hairline fractures in the shin. So that's kind of interesting. We have these historical matches that were always there. But again, these were mixed style. They had weird rules, like you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
The Brazilians had what was called vale tudo. And that was, from mixed style, it went in, we're going to say no rules. And the reason they did this was not for, personal gain or something like that. It was experiment. They were scientists of combat. They said, let's take all the rules out and let's see what happened of, I believe, the military government and a lot of social changes. They actually wind up banning vale tudo in Brazil. So it died out in popularity, but they still had these massive underground following.
Okay.
Because you had, but mostly in Rio,
okay.
you had a fighting culture. Like Brazil is a fighting culture. People
Yeah.
think Brazil has only Brazilian jiu-jitsu now. That's not true. They have
Mhm.
a huge history of capoeira. Actually, karate is very big in Brazil.
Okay.
Taekwondo is very big in Brazil. They have a lot of martial arts going there, and it's a culture that is
That embraces
respects combat, and boxing is
That's
not
really
as big, but Muay Thai has been there for a while
Okay.
as well. So you had this underground Valley Tudo culture
Okay.
that exported to America in 1993, the UFC, and people were like, whoa. But it was a little too much for us Americans,
Okay.
a little too bloody, a little too crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely something we hadn't seen,
Right. And in the turn of this century, they had a more sanitized version that said, okay, we'll wear gloves.
Okay.
They came up with the unified rules. You can't do this, you can't do that. And they made it more a spectator sport, which is very different from the Gracie's original idea. The original idea was, hey, let's be scientists. Let's see what works.
Okay.
And we'll take this move, we'll try and impose our style and experiment. And that happened in America for a while, but then obviously there are people who own the company. They want to make money.
Yeah.
So
they have to.
they said the more spectator friendly it is, the cleaner it is, the more we can bring a polished product. And while Zuffa didn't start the unified rules, most people think that the unified rules started with Zuffa. That's not true. It started before that.
Okay. And the unified
but-
rules, was that how they went about making it more of a spectator sport? How do you bring the spectators into it where they weren't before?
Right. So, for example, you could only wear a certain type of gear, clothing. You couldn't wear a gi. You couldn't wear this. You couldn't wear that. The gi is the traditional martial art uniform.
Yeah.
You had to wear gloves. There were all sorts of rules. You couldn't do this 12 to 6 elbow.
Mm-hmm.
They took away soccer ball kicks. They took away this, that, and that movement has been growing a little bit. But they really sat down and made a unified rules. And I believe the New Jersey Commission was really instrumental in that. New Jersey and Las Vegas.
Oh, interesting.
And Jeff Blatnick, who was an announcer for the UFC at one point, very famous wrestler, was also very involved in it. He's kind of the godfather of these rules. And also some of the referees, like Big John McCarthy, I believe, had something to do with it. I'm not sure, but that's what I understand. And they said, let's sanitize it a little bit to make it more palatable to American audiences and more sellable, and also very important, safer in some ways. Well, at least they thought they were making it safer, and I applaud that, because that's when it really exploded and then really came into our consciousness, and we have the modern MMA movement today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blood testing. Brain, a lot of medical checks. That stuff is fantastic because it keeps the fighter safe. It shouldn't be that you destroy your body for the sport.
Yeah,
and I love that the most recent one is that they're testing very, very significantly for performance enhancers. It's excellent.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's moving in interesting directions.
So in that respect, kind of.
So I hope that wasn't too long.
No, that was perfect. I mean, yeah, you need that kind of background to understand where it's coming from. So today, where we are today, I'm sure the evolution of the fighting has evolved. What has it become today? Like, what makes an MMA fighter today? What do you need in that ring to survive, more or less?
Sure. So I'd say it's very important that the aspiring MMA fighter understand that he is a sports athlete.
Yes.
So he has to condition himself. And with the rounds, it's not like a self-defense scenario anymore. Each round is an individual game. So if it's a 3-5 minute fight, you're fighting 3 5-minute rounds, all judged individually, and you have to see what works, and you have to gameplay. The martial arts that we draw from are the striking arts, obviously, the stand-up grappling arts, and the ground grappling arts.
Okay.
And the 7 arts that have proven themselves most adaptable to mixed martial art combat, or Valley Judo combat, whatever, are in the grappling ranges, judo, Russian sambo.
Okay, interesting.
And wrestling. Those are the throwing arts, the standard grappling. On the ground grappling ends, again, judo, sambo, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And also in the striking, Muay Thai, boxing, and to some extent knockdown karate. So every now and then you see kind of karate and American kickboxing, or Western kickboxing. Yeah. So those are the arts that consistently perform very, very well. And it's hybridization of these arts that determine what kind of fighter you're going to be.
Okay.
However, if you notice, 2/3 of the fight is grappling. So while striking is very important, having a background in Western wrestling, or jiu-jitsu or judo, gives you a very, very strong advantage. And if I were to say, out of the three elements, the stand-up striking, the stand-up grappling, and the ground grappling, which is the most important? By far, there's no question the stand-up grappling is the key. So if you're a kickboxer, but you cannot stay on your feet, you can't kickbox. You look at T.J. Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz, Demetrius Johnson, all of these people, all these top-level fighters actually came from grappling backgrounds, majority of which at this point are coming from wrestling. Or some types of wrestling, stand-up wrestling art. So it gives you a tremendous advantage. And in my academy, we put a very strong emphasis on learning the stand-up grappling and the ground grappling before we actually even touch on striking. So that's for a lot of reasons. And I would say if you have any interest in competing, you have to know how to wrestle. So, which is the same as self-defense, honestly. If you look at self-defense encounters, people think it's Krav Maga or this or that. Crime statistics show that fights go to the clinch very, very, very quickly.
Interesting.
You know how to clinch and throw a person on their head. You have a big advantage. But we're talking about MMA here. But just saying, as I said, wrestling as a foundation of what you do is a key to success. Which is why I haven't done the statistics in a long time. But the last time I did the statistics, which was a few years ago, was something like 87% of UFC champions and the top 10 contenders were all grapplers.
Oh, really?
87%.
Wow.
That statistic is probably not true anymore, but I remember a few years ago, I did that statistic. I did a calculation of historical champions and current champions and top 10 rated guys. And I did about a 10-year backward glance, and you'd look at 87% were wrestlers, grappling.
Wow. I didn't know that's significant.
If you're interested in fighting, you know how to grapple.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like while there's a bunch of disciplines involved, everybody's going to kind of come with their own forte, their own strengths, and it's not so much balance, but kind of figuring out what it is you need to supplement that kind of will kind of raise your game up. That's kind of, am I right? Kind of saying that?
I would say I would absolutely agree. There's a disagreement. This is very interesting, and I don't really know the answer.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, who I completely respect, is very often talking about one side of the spectrum, and then there's me, maybe, and a couple other guys talking the other side. So let me explain what I'm talking about. Is that, before, when we had the mixed style fights or the Valley Tuda fights, what you would have is a karate guy versus a jiu-jitsu guy. Or a wrestler. Even in the early days of the UFC, it was, a wrestler versus a jiu-jitsu guy, whatever. And obviously you had to cross-train because when the Gracies first came in, nobody knew what the hell they're doing, and they just beat everybody. So you had to cross-train and draw from this style, draw from that style, and do what you said, put it together. But basically what you saw was athletes that devoted a significant portion of their life to one martial art. So becoming a very high level in one martial art, and then adding these other elements. Whereas, as I listen to Joe Rogan, he's saying that there's this new generation that grow up as MMA fighters, and from day one, they're doing everything. So they're punching, kicking, they're shooting double leg takedowns, then they're going for arm triangles, going for back takes for chokes.
Do you think that hurts them?
Yeah, personally, honestly, I don't have the answer because the data's not out yet. But at this point, the dominant champions and the dominant guys still come from single
disciplines,
and then they cross-train.
Gotcha.
So they definitely become experts in one element before they go off to another. So you have people that start out in one discipline, but then you have people like Forrest Griffin was the first, where he basically started out and as an MMA fighter. So from day one, he went to an MMA gym and he was doing everything at the same time. But if you notice, his reign didn't last. And Carlos Condit is kind of another fighter, though he's primarily a striker. And he walked into Jackson MMA and started doing MMA at day one. And definitely he got to a high level. So I tend to believe that you will always see an expert who cross trains versus a jack of all trades winning.
Because you're gonna have more.
Let's touch base back in 10 years and see what that is.
Find out what happened now. Yeah, exactly.
Find out what happened. That being said, I would say, interesting enough, super athletes in their individual disciplines, like the Michael Jordans of boxing, the Michael Jordans of wrestling, and the Michael Jordans of jiu-jitsu often don't do that well in MMA.
Really?
And that's funny. It's really interesting because definitely you want to get to a high skill, but Randy Couture is a very good example. He's an older first generation fighter.
Yeah, I remember.
Randy Couture was always excellent wrestler.
Okay.
Great wrestler. But never, he was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. He never made it to the Olympics, won a gold medal. He's not at that level.
Yeah.
Whereas, the same thing with Anderson Silva, who's noted to be a very good striker, although he actually started jiu-jitsu first. But he's noted to be a very good striker. If you see Anderson Silva in Thai boxing, when he fights the super high-level Thai boxers, he doesn't do so well. Because in that game, or in boxing, the game is so hyper-specialized that an MMA fighter doesn't want to be that specialized. Okay. He doesn't want to go to the hyper gamesmanship of the jiu-jitsu game or the hyper gamesmanship of a wrestling match and, how am I going to score here? Or how am I going to turn over here? I have 5 seconds left to do this. Those are things that an MMA fighter doesn't worry about. But that's the key to victory in all those individual sports. So the top of the top, the hyper specialized guys, one of them is Dwayne Ludwig.
Okay.
I mean, a very good type boxer, but was not a good MMA fighter. Very good Thai boxer, very good, but could not get his game going in Thai boxing, in MMA. I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up.
Yeah.
Very good Thai boxing, not so good in MMA. Because he was just too hyper specialized. As a coach and an MMA striking coach, you can see that he's dialing down the specificity and being much more MMA oriented. And he's an excellent striking coach. There's no question. I don't mean to, cast aspersions on his skill or anything like that.
No,
I think when you look at the top guys in Thailand, the top guys in the wrestling world, very few of them make it over. And Ronda Rousey, a good example too. Okay, she won the bronze medal.
Yeah.
That's a difference.
Yeah.
She didn't win gold. And then you see someone like I think Sarah McMahon. She was gold plus, I believe, and she's not doing so great. Sehu is a contra example. He won gold, and he's a phenomenal MMA fighter. I think because he's such an amazing, coachable athlete, you can he can adapt. He's so intelligent. He's so gifted in his his agility that his body can do whatever he tells it to. The guy's been boxing for a very short time now, and he's a phenomenal boxer. I mean,
so he just picks it up.
So there's always Yeah, you're right. But generally speaking, the hyper-evolved sport-specific guys, the A level of that sport, don't transition to MMA, but the guys right under them, they do very well.
Interesting.
They do very well, and then they're able to cross-train and adopt those skills, and then they become awesome MMA champions. So this is why I think, just touching on Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor is a great striker. If he fights Mayweather in a boxing match, it'll be a joke. You're going to go to this guy's turf and fight his game? It's so hyper-evolved. It's not even, for me, it's not even interesting. Because you're dealing with apples and oranges. Are you going to say the best ping pong player is going to go fight the best tennis player?
Absolutely.
And let's see what happens. That's just stupid. You're hyper-evolved. So they're apples and oranges.
Can't compete against each other, really.
Yeah, right, exactly. So,
but I actually had a question about yourself as well, because your background is in jiu-jitsu, is that correct? Or with the standing grappling? Is that right?
Actually, no.
Oh, okay.
I started training martial arts in 1975 in karate.
Oh, okay.
I moved to Japan. I lived in Japan and trained judo and a number of martial arts in Japan. Not just judo, but primarily judo.
I saw you studied in Japan.
When I came back, I devoted myself to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but also to I started picking up boxing and kickboxing as well, Western style kickboxing.
So you always had this idea in mind that you wanted a wide variety of these skills.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have at this point in my life, I've trained 18 different martial arts. I'm not an expert in them, but I've trained seriously in 18 different martial arts.
Oh, wow.
So, I've been around. It's what happens when you're like almost 50 years old.
You get some experience there. Well, that's it.
You get a good amount of time training in Japan, in judo.
Okay.
And some strike arts in Japan, and some other grappling arts as well in Japan. I spent a lot of time there. Unfortunately, I was hit by a car, so I got very injured. came back to America, recuperated.
Okay.
And then started picking up jiu-jitsu and other martial arts as I recovered.
Okay. Yeah, because I know you're fluent in Japanese. You have a degree in East Asian Studies from Columbia, so definitely
Yes.
Japan was a big influence on you
Yes,
at that
absolutely.
time. But
Absolutely.
excellent. And so when you came back to the States, when did you kind of get the idea in your head that you wanted to open a studio, you wanted to train people with your vision? When did that kind of come about?
It's very funny that you should say that because I never had that vision.
Really? Interesting.
I always wanted to train myself
Okay.
and be a martial artist.
Mhm.
Yes, and I just wanted to pursue the martial arts and as seriously as I could and test myself in the highest levels of combat.
Yeah.
And a lot of my fights are not MMA; they're Vale Tudo,
Ah.
where groin shots and hair pulling was allowed.
Ooh.
And I've even accepted challenge matches where eye gouging was allowed. We simulated in terms of we wore goggles
Oh.
because I just wanted to test myself to say what I do is real.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm very interested in weapon defense because
Okay.
I deal with a lot of tactical personnel. So we train live with what's called the shock knife, which is an electrified taser knife,
Oh, wow.
and we literally try and stab each other. You have to go live. You have to go real. That's the problem with a lot of
Yeah.
the traditional martial arts is they do forms or they do this. If you want to learn how to swim,
Yeah,
go in
you
the
have to
water.
jump in the
You want to
water.
learn how to fight, you fight. And that is the crucible of combat is the only way you know
Mhm.
this works, this doesn't, this works, this doesn't. So my always goal was just to be a competent martial artist, and because I love martial arts, and I believe it's important to understand the concepts of self-defense. So when I started competing, I felt that this was the pinnacle of my dream, and then I started segueing a little bit away from that because I kind of did, I did what I set out to do, and but people kind of contacted me, and when I was going to graduate school, I had a couple students, and it was kind of a way to just make a couple extra bits
Okay.
of cash, and
Interesting.
then that turned into 10 students and
Yeah.
20 students, and then before you know it, I,
Yeah.
I had a lot, and I had a few people asking me to coach them or help them with their fight camps. Had a number of people ask me that way back, even when I was fighting, and I stepped up and helped out because you do that for your friends. But my real absolute passion is to teach people skills of self-defense,
Mhm.
and we had some students who have unfortunately been in altercations,
Yeah.
and through their training were able to protect themselves, and that's personally where I feel the most passion and the most joy that I can make a contribution to someone's life. Also, health and good eating habits,
Yeah.
stress management. These are also important in your life, and I think martial arts. We were discussing this a
Yeah.
little bit before the conversation that the martial arts has a very mental and cerebral side. Uh, uh, uh,
So you feel people who aren't interested in competing can still benefit.
of my school are people who never want to compete in MMA, but are interested in either self-defense or personal improvement.
Mhm.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so your school itself, I mean, you're coming with a lot of experience, a lot of your own vision. Do you think it brings something unique that some other training programs don't have?
There are a lot of great instructors out there.
Yeah.
I try to be one of them. I would say this: one of my personal heroes in terms of philosophy of martial arts is Bruce Lee.
Okay.
Obviously, we all love Bruce Lee, right?
Everybody
But
does.
I was never actually trained in his martial art or anything like that. But I was exposed to his philosophy, and he said many very interesting things that inspired me. One of them is that we have to get away from these classical barriers.
Hmm.
So when I was in Japan doing judo, you're a judoka, I'm a judoka, we spar under judo rules. When I was boxing, I get into a boxing ring, I'm a boxer, you're a boxer, let's go under boxing rules. Okay. You're this guy, you're that guy.
Hmm.
And that is a problem because fighting doesn't have rules, and
Yes.
MMA has very little rules. So what people do in a lot of MMA schools is that one day they'll go to a Thai boxing class, The next day they'll go to a jiu-jitsu class. The next day they'll go to a wrestling class. But really, the plus alpha, the way you get an edge is understanding how, first getting strong elements in each, of course, but then understanding the connections and the transitions, the micro transitions between each. So I can actually point to about 20 matches where the hinge, the point where the match changed, was in a transition from grappling to striking, striking to grappling. And that little switch, pop, 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 that guy's transition is so much better and is able to seamlessly switch from one discipline to another without a second's pause. Just it's all fluid together. Is amazing. Which is why I said I don't know if the new fighters are going to be mixed martial artists or cross-trained people from a single discipline, because honestly, in MMA and in combat, you want to break down these barriers. I think that all the styles themselves started out as pedagogical tools. So, for example, we say the word, this is jiu-jitsu. Well, what is jiu-jitsu? I mean, actually, it can be a lot of things. But it's kind of this thing, this body of knowledge that we say we're going to learn this. And what is judo? It's this body of knowledge, we're going to learn this. And it just helps us organize the techniques. This is boxing. This is kickboxing, whatever. So it just helps us teach. But in reality, there are no barriers between styles, because a fight's a fight. You do whatever you can to survive, to win.
Absolutely.
So in our academy, what I like to do is, once people demonstrate a very strong understanding of clean technique in a certain discipline, I like them to start breaking down the barriers.
Okay.
And so, like I said, we transition from striking to grappling, back to striking, back to grappling, back then to submissions, pop, 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 and we, with our sets and the transitions that are so swift between them. So that's something that I'm very interested in martial art called shoot boxing. And boxing, people familiar with, obviously, kickboxing are familiar. Not a lot of people are familiar with shoot boxing. Boxing allows punches, obviously. Kickboxing allows punches and kicks. Muay Thai allows punches, kicks, elbows, and some clinch work.
Okay.
And shoot boxing allows all of that, plus every throw that you would ever do in wrestling,
okay,
judo, or any other takedown.
Okay.
So you combine, the stand-up styles of grappling and the stand-up styles of striking. So that's once we, obviously, like I said, we have to have a very strong foundation in the clean technique boxing or kickboxing. But once they have that, we start really mixing in and destroying those barriers between individual styles. So
the
combination that I might teach is, jab, cross, hook, single takedown, then to a double leg takedown, then to a high C takedown, because those two failed. Then from the high C, then you hit the ground technique and you submit him with an arm triangle. So that's pop, 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 seamless transition.
And it's hard to defend against that, it seems like.
When they've developed a good, strong technical base.
Yeah. Gotcha. God, that's really interesting. Yeah, it seems like it's really the student is kind of left to themselves to, they have this basic technique, and then they kind of find where they land their own technique, almost their own way of associating with their body, just by combining all these disciplines. It sounds really interesting. But
yeah, exactly. You just said it. It's martial arts, so there has to be what I believe in, an artistic component. What do we mean by art? We mean a part of yourself, your own interpretation. You're not a robot. You're an artist. You have your expression, your interpretation, your way of putting the things together. And if you're not doing that, you're not an artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I try and develop my students as artists, and the highest form of art is self-expression.
Yeah.
And I actually, Bruce Lee, it's funny, Bruce, we come back to Bruce Lee, he has a quote like that. I forgot what it is, but that's what it is. It's a form of self-expression.
Yeah.
And for me, put aside fighting, all that, I just enjoy that. I enjoy experimenting with different movements, like a gymnast would, except my movements turn people into human pretzels.
So it's very useful for that.
Yeah. It's definitely a functional skill.
But as just as a last question for you, Rene, what's your dream match? Who are two people you'd want to see in that ring, testing themselves against each other? Do you have a match in the sky that you'd want to see?
Do you mean like in their, or like different eras in their prime, or do you mean just people today?
Just different eras, different people
because
throughout.
If you ask me in the prime, I would like to see Hickson Briggs. Yeah. Hickson Gracie versus Alexander Karelin.
Yeah, that's gonna be the match for you.
I don't know if you know Alexander Karelin. Yeah, he is one of the top grappling athletes. Does have an MMA match, and Hickson Gracie, the god of jiu-jitsu in his prime. Hickson Gracie versus Alexander Karelin would be my dream match. Or if you want to go further back, Hickson Gracie versus Carl Gotch.
Okay.
Or Elio Gracie. No, Elio Gracie versus Carl Gotch. There you go.
Okay, we got that one. All right. That one, I'm writing it down. I'm gonna put it into the computer. We'll get the simulations going here.
Yeah. I can go on this all day. I'm a fan of some of the fighters in Brazil from the 70s and 80s that are not so well known here.
Yeah.
Or even before that, João Barreto, Pinduca, all these old masters from Brazil. They really intrigue me in their styles. Fabio Gurgel was a great master. He's known in the jiu-jitsu world today, but they tested themselves in Vale Tudo matches over and over again. No time limits, no holds barred. Just crazy stuff.
Wow.
And that is something that you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And there was. Elio has a famous match against Kimura, but there are many others. There was one, speaking of the Gracies, and he fought a Vale Tudo match once a week for, I believe it was like 2 years straight.
Really?
Yes,
wow.
On TV every Friday night in Brazil. So he was like unbelievable, just unbelievable. These are just gladiators and warriors, and also they acted as men of integrity and honor.
Mm-hmm.
Something that the modern MMA fighter could learn from a little bit.
Absolutely.
They were really seeing themselves as in the lineage of the samurai. So you saw a type of behavior that you wouldn't mind, putting this guy next to your kid and having him teach your kid. There's some MMA fighters I don't want anywhere near anybody in my family.
Yeah,
that's a sad state of affairs today, and that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a show, so sometimes you get these guys who go a little bit over the top.
Yeah,
and the old school guys, the old school guys never did that. I appreciate that. I lived in Japan. I Japanese values
the humility
are very close to my heart. The soul, the spirit of the samurai.
Absolutely.
So when you're acting like a buffoon.
Yeah. Like a WWF wrestler or something.
Yes, exactly. Not my favorite thing.
Yeah, no, I can commiserate there.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's
beautiful.
Those are my dream match would be to see some of those old guys again. Just
it's the classic fighters there. Absolutely.
Yeah, classic fighters. Yeah.
Well, Rene, thanks so much for taking the time. This is Rene Dreifuss with Radical MMA in New York City. Definitely check it out. And thank you so much for kind of bringing us into this world. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you for your time. It was a real pleasure.
Absolutely.
Os.